The confession hit Jonah Hale long before he ever heard it spoken. Long before Talea voiced the words that would stop his heart cold. Long before he understood what danger, longing, and courage actually sounded like. But that moment would come later. It began on a quiet frontier morning when the world still felt half asleep. The plain behind Jonah's homestead was washed in pale dawn gold, the kind of light that softened even the rough edges of his weather-beaten ranch. He had been sweeping out the horse's stall when a faint scrape drifted from the supply shed. It wasn't loud, more like someone trying not to be heard. He set down the broom, wiped his hands on his trousers, and stepped toward the shed with his pulse ticking hard in his neck. He pushed open the door. Inside, framed by dust motes drifting through a thin sunbeam, stood a woman taller than any he had seen, broad-shouldered, steady-eyed, an Apache bow slung across her back with the ease of someone born to carry it. She was rummaging through crates, her movements calm, measured, unafraid. Her gaze lifted to his. For a breath, neither spoke. The air between them felt charged, like the moment before lightning hits dry earth. He swallowed. "If you needed food," he said, voice rough with sleep and surprise, "you could have asked." Her stare didn't waver. She simply gathered what she'd taken, jerked meat, beans, a handful of flour, then moved past him with a silent step. At the tree line, she paused and glanced back once. A quick, assessing look, sharp as flint striking rock. Then she vanished into the pines. Jonah spent the next days trying not to think about her, which only made him think of her more. 3 mornings later, while he was hammering a loose board back onto his fence, a prickle crept across his spine, the sensation of being watched. He turned. She stood among the cedars, half in shadow, half in light, unhidden now. He lifted one hand in a stiff greeting. She didn't move. The next day, she stepped closer. The day after that, she crossed his dry yard as if it belonged to her and sat beside him on the porch, long legs stretched out, back straight, expression unreadable. He offered coffee. She accepted. They said little. Words weren't needed to fill the quiet that settled between them like warm dust. It was only on the 4th day that she spoke. "My name is Talea," she said, eyes on the horizon. "Jonah," he replied. She studied him, really studied him, as if trying to measure something inside him he didn't know he carried. "Why didn't you point your rifle at me?" He shrugged, though truthfully, he wasn't sure. "You didn't look like someone who needed threatening." She gave the faintest smile, small as a crack in stone. "And why do you keep coming back?" he asked. She looked down at her hands, strong fingers scarred from years of bowstrings and rough land. "You are not what men usually are." He didn't know what that meant, but the words warmed something in him that had been winter cold since his father died the year before. Over the next days, she helped him mend fences and fetch water. She moved through his space with a quiet confidence, sometimes brushing against him, accidentally or maybe not, and Jonah found himself talking more than he had in years. She listened attentively, eyes soft when he spoke of loneliness, sharp when he mentioned danger, unexpectedly gentle when he admitted he hadn't shared a meal with another soul in 8 months. He never asked about her clan or her past. He sensed she'd tell him only when she chose. And she did, one night, long after the sun had sunk behind the ridge. The bruise was what Jonah saw first. A dark mark blooming along her cheekbone, half-shadowed in lantern glow. She tried to turn her face away, but Jonah stepped closer. "What happened?" Her breath trembled. "My people have decided my future for me. A marriage I do not want." His chest tightened. "You ran." "Yes." She lifted her chin, though fear flickered in her eyes. "They will come." The floorboard under Jonah's boot creaked as he shifted, thinking. "You can hide in the cellar." She hesitated. Apache warriors did not hide. But after a moment, she nodded. She descended into the cool darkness, and Jonah secured the hatch just as hoofbeats thundered across his yard. The front door burst open. Warriors flooded in, torches blazing, heat and smoke filling his small home. Jonah stood with his hands raised, heart pounding, praying the sound of Talea's breath below stayed hidden beneath the rumble of men searching for something they believed was theirs. One warrior kicked aside a chair. Another thrust open cabinets. Jonah's pulse hammered against his ribs. But after long, suffocating minutes, they left. When the torches faded, Jonah lifted the hatch. Talea emerged shaken, her hand trembling until he took it in his. For 3 days, she didn't leave his ranch. She slept lightly, ate little, spoke less. But she stayed. And in the soft, slow hours, fixing a saddle, fetching water, sitting beneath the vast blue of the afternoon sky, something unspoken grew between them. A trust. A warmth. A quiet understanding neither dared name. Then came the night everything broke. 7 warriors rode in at dusk, their torches blazing like burning spears against the sinking sun. Dust curled behind their horses' hooves. Jonah stepped out onto his porch, pulse steady though his hands sweated. Their leader dismounted, tall and hard-eyed. "Send her out," he barked in Apache, voice rough as gravel. Talea, standing just behind Jonah's shoulder, translated softly. Jonah shook his head. "She stays because she wants to." The leader sneered. He spat something sharp and cutting. Talea's translation came tightly. "He asks why you would die for a woman who is not yours." Jonah's throat tightened, but he didn't hesitate. Tell him we choose each other." Talea inhaled sharply, as though those words cracked something inside her wide open. She repeated the sentence for the warriors, her voice unsteady but strong enough to carry. The group murmured among themselves, firelight flickering over their faces. Finally, the leader gave one curt nod. Talea translated softly, "If I choose you, then I am no longer their concern." And just like that, the warriors turned. Their torches drifted into the forest, shrinking into pinpoints of wandering fire before vanishing entirely. Jonah exhaled shakily, legs nearly buckling with the release of fear. Talea stepped closer, her hand finding his. "You risked your life," she whispered. "And you risked yours coming back here." The silence between them shifted, warmer, deeper, weighted with something long unspoken. She leaned her forehead gently to his, breath mingling with his, lantern glow soft on her bruised cheek. "I haven't had sex in 6 months," she murmured suddenly, voice thick with vulnerability and a touch of embarrassed humor. "I thought I would say it before courage leaves me." Jonah let out a shaky laugh, surprised and disarmed. "I wasn't expecting that." "I know." Her smile grew, tender and brave. He touched her cheek lightly, brushing the bruise with the gentlest care. "I don't want anything from you except what you choose." "That is why I'm here," she whispered. Outside, coyotes called across the plains, their howls rolling under a darkening sky. Lantern light flickered in the windows. Somewhere in the quiet, their joined hands felt like a promise neither had managed to speak until now. Over the following days, life settled into a rhythm neither had imagined possible. They worked side by side, cooked simple suppers, repaired the damage left by the search. Sometimes she teased him. Sometimes he made her laugh. Sometimes they sat watching dusk settle over the land, saying nothing at all. The fear that once clung to them loosened. Hope took its place, slowly, like dawn stealing back the night. One evening, as the sun spilled molten gold across the plains, Talea stood with Jonah at the fence line. Wind brushed through tall grass, carrying the scent of warm earth. "What comes next?" she asked quietly. "Whatever we make of it," Jonah said. She considered that, eyes on the horizon where day bowed to night. "Then let us make it with truth. With courage. With each other," he added. Her hand slipped into his. "Yes." A silence followed, peaceful, full, earned. Light faded, stars pricked open the sky, and the land breathed calm around them. In a world carved by hardship and loss, two people who had lived too long alone had found something worth holding. Not possession. Not rescue. Choice. And in the last quiet of that western night, the wounded rancher and the defiant Apache woman stood side by side, bound not by fear or duty, but by a promise freely spoken. To face whatever came next, together.